So at this point, it's going to be harder to pay attention. You're going to need more permission, like we talked about. I'm going to have you do just a quick check-in. So how are you doing on your norms? How are you doing on the things that you said are going to go well and that you might struggle with, and giving each other permission? Um, how are you doing on like kind of your sustainability from here on out? So maybe just like I said, do a quick check. Are there things you need to quickly take care of that will make it easier for you to focus? Is there a norm that you forgot about that you need to kind of reestablish or rethink about? If you have questions, they live or comments even. So I didn't like this part of today. That's it. That's good feedback for me. This can live on that backboard, and I take that. Also, there's a survey at the end of today that I'm going to ask for that same kind of feedback, and as far as planning for the 7th. Okay. So we have so far made it through just kind of basics of PBIS, basics of tiered systems of support, and kind of our first 2 pillars. We're going to go through reinforcement and correction, and then we're going to go really heavy into systems planning as far as your scope and sequence and your team charters and all of that will get you started. In full transparency, I don't know that we're going to make it to Panorama today. So you have the documents. I'll at least leave about 20 minutes to do a quick overview. But I always plan for like 5 days of content in one day. So there we have it. Okay. So reinforcement. Reinforcement is usually kind of one of the trickiest parts of talking about PBIS, because I get this idea of, do we need to actually, kids should just do these things, or we don't want to bribe them, or, I've tried reinforcement and all it turned into was like a ton of tickets and points and kids didn't really care about those, etc. So we're going to kind of talk about why reinforcement is part of this behavior shaping, and really what it means. So we usually confuse things as humans a lot, right? Like, in fact, I'm always hesitant when they're like, oh, share good practices with other schools. And we're like, oh, we did a PLC and, we did this. And then the other school takes it and doesn't work. And it's like, oh, we forgot to tell you the 30 other things we did before that to make that work, right? And so reinforcement's kind of one of those things. So reinforcement, as far as PBIS goes, is we want a tangible reinforcement plan that we can use school-wide. Okay, and we'll talk about what tangible means. The goal would be for any student being reinforced by any adult at any time. So if your reinforcement system doesn't meet that criteria, you need a new reinforcement system. So I can be the band teacher walking down the hall, and I can see a student that did something kind for another student, and I can go, that was really respectful, here's a point, or something like that. So that is what we want to have happen. Mainly because, again, like I was mentioning earlier, most of our behavior issues happen in common areas or during unstructured times. Okay? And what happens is we can't reinforce good behavior in those times. I mean, we can verbally say, hey, you did a nice job, right? But those are kind of high leverage times that we need to be able to reinforce. So we have to have a system that's universal that anyone can use at any time with any kid. Okay? So you're going to want to think through, does our here. The other criteria that you want to think about is kids need to know they're getting it. So, which sounds, am I okay? Okay. Okay, perfect. I'm
just ignore me.
I mean, whatever. Is that kids need to know they're getting it. So sometimes in order to better data collect, I'm going to see if this will work this time. In order to better data collect, schools have said, we're going to use this electronic system because it's great. It tells me exactly when a teacher reinforces, who got it, etc. And then teachers started forgetting to tell kids that they got it, right? So we have these like electronic points, like the Hero system or PBIS apps or something. And kids, all of a sudden, everyone got 10 points for being on time, but no one knew they got 10 points for being on time. So showed up in the system, but it wasn't actually shaping the behavior that we want kids to have. So then all of a sudden kids are like, I have 50 points. I have no idea where these came from. That's awesome. I'm going to go to the store, right? And so the reinforcement is literally you or that we want more of, okay? So if they don't know they're getting it for that behavior, it's not going to shape that behavior. So we have to always pair that with the naming and the understanding of this is why. This is what happened that you got this for, okay? So that's the second criteria. So I'm not saying hero points are bad. If you have hero points, I don't know if you guys are aware, it's where you scan and they get a point. So they wear a badge, you scan it, they get a point or whatever. It can work great as long as it meets the criteria of every kid has a badge on at any given time. And they're saying, I appreciate that you were responsible in the hall. Here's your points. Okay, so that it can work great. You just have to meet that criteria. If you're not meeting that criteria, you're not going to get the outcomes that you want. Okay, I need a marker. What should I do with the markers? Okay, we're good. And if you can't see in the back, you're gonna have to kind of envision what I'm showing. So reinforcement in the classroom is a little bit different. So this is school-wide reinforcement. This is classroom reinforcement. We want, and I showed that this on Tuesday, but I think it's important to think about. So we want that 4-to-1 ratio, meaning 4 positives to 1 corrective. That's how humans work best. We want to hear 4, and it's not like positive, like you're amazing, nice job, high five, right? I mean, that's great, that's positive. But it's positive interactions. Okay, it's 4 positive interactions to everyone, corrective interaction. So a teacher standing at the door saying hello, positive interaction. Okay, so it doesn't have to be like that verbal praise to be an interaction. We want 4-to-1. We team to 1. Okay, when we get above that 13 mark, it becomes kind of ingenuine, and kids start tuning that out. So we want our reinforcement and our correction to be distinct. Okay, and if we're giving it so like freely, it's not distinct anymore. It just becomes normal and it doesn't shape behavior. Okay, so that's something to think about as well. In this 4-to-1, so this is 4 positives to 1 corrective. Okay, I don't know how to spell, so if it's spelled wrong, you're just gonna, again, what's the rule? Smile and move on. Okay. So 4-to-1 positive to corrective, office referral. So in your ed handbook, when we get to correctives, we have office incidents and classroom or like minor. Okay. So those are 2 data collection systems we have for correctives. We want our positives to match those. So our school-wide reinforcement, system matches our office referral in that 4-to-1 ratio, okay? So we should have 4 points or 4 tickets given for every 1 office referral, okay? So that's where that school-wide comes in. Now, teachers are like, yeah, but in my class, I'm not going to give out 1 billion hero points or 1,000 Cooper tickets or something like that. Teachers get their own reinforcement system, absolutely. So you want to use a point card or a token economy or class dojo, use it. That's great. Those are good. Those are classroom reinforcement systems, and that ratio comes with your minors. Okay. So this is your classroom reinforcement system. That's the 4-to-1 with your minors, okay? We should have significantly more minors put into ed handbook than we should office referrals, okay? So minors are put in, and again, ed handbook is not used to punish. When I first started training, I don't know, 8-9 years ago, I had a teacher go, I put in incidents and it didn't change behavior. Yeah, because it's a data collection system. Now that was bad training on our part, right? Because they thought that this is it. This is no, that's just how we're collecting data on. So minors are meant to, we want to, again, back to those core values prevention, we want to identify escalated behavior as soon as it starts to escalate so we can put the smallest amount of intervention in place to get the student back on track. Okay, minors are the information that we need to be able to know that that's happening. Okay, so we want a lot of those, actually. No, I mean, we want 0 of those. Obviously, we want perfect behavior if that were ideal. But that's where we want We want teachers to be entering those because that gives us good information on golf. This kid actually has 4 minors all of a sudden. They're starting to struggle. Let's intervene now than waiting for 4 office referrals, which is when they're really escalating in struggle. Okay? So that means that we're going to have a lot more minors, which means we have a lot of freedom with our classroom reinforcement system. Okay, so those are kind of how those ratios work, or you want to think about. Okay, so school-wide reinforcement is really for above and beyond great behavior. It's not a freely given kind of thing. It's that, yeah, I noticed that above and beyond behavior. Okay, just like an office referral is above and beyond behavior in the opposite direction. Okay, turn and talk about that at your table. Let that settle for a second. Turn and talk about that. Go. Okay, back in 5. That was fast. Conversations ending. We're going to still talk about reinforcement in 3, 2, and 1. So this is where I'd be giving my tickets for above. We got some. Okay, so the criteria on the TFI says your school-wide reinforcement system needs to be linked to your school expectations. So 3 to 5 rules, which means that students can clearly see that the reinforcement that they're receiving is linked to the rule that they received it for. Okay, and I think it says to get a 2 on that, 90% of staff have given the reinforcement within the past 2 months, and it was received by at least 50% of students. Okay, so that's kind of the criteria for that. Think about in reinforcement or positive interactions is contingent versus non-contingent behavior. So I told you PBIS is behavior shaping, which means that reinforcement punishment shaping kind of thing. But there's also the SEL part that is the we are human part. Contingent and non-contingent attention. So contingent attention is this, what that we're talking about. You received attention from me or reinforcement from me because you engaged in something. So you raised your hand. I say thanks so much for raising your hand. That's respectful, right? That's contingent reinforcement. Non-contingent attention is just the fact that you're a human. I recognize you and you get attention from me. Okay. So this is equally as important. So non-contingent attention, the idea of greeting a student at the door. So teachers that greet student at the door, that's one of the best behavior management techniques we can use. It decreases behavior 25% in the classroom by just greeting students at the door. Okay. So that's because people like to know that they're noticed, right? Like I like to be acknowledged when I'm present. Okay. So in a school, you need to plan for both contingent and non-contingent attention. Okay. The problem, we think, oh, non-contingent happens all the time. I talk to kids all the time. Yeah, we do. We talk to the kids that are easy to talk to. Okay. So the kids that will demand our attention, like my 17-year-old, is the most social human on the planet. Every single one of his teachers know who he is because he demands it, right? Like he cannot live without it. We did when he was little, he wanted to do a lemonade stand, right? Like most kids. And I go out, and he's not just standing on the corner. He's going door to door selling lemonade, right? Because he just couldn't handle that people might not want to talk to him. So he's taking orders, Um, he just declared his major in sales. So, whereas my, 14, almost 15-year-old, she got influenza A or something, I don't know, a while back, and so she had to be quarantined in her room, and this is the best part of her whole life. Like, she was like, this is amazing. I get an iPad, watch whatever I want. No one talks to me. You bring me food literally to my room, and I didn't see another human for 10 days. It's the best thing ever, right? She will not demand your attention, okay? So we have to be intentional about that non-contingent attention, because we will miss kids if we're not intentional, okay? So you want to think through that. So that's one thing that you might want to put action about. How are we planning for both contingent and non-contingent, not just focused on that contingent, okay? Thanks for raising your hand. Yeah. Thanks for being respectful. I appreciate it. Yeah. Candy bar for you. Yeah. Yeah.
Do we need to do this with our staff too? Like, is there a reward system for staff who are doing our PBIS or our talking to kids? Like our building, we do some little bear bucks for kids who drink and stamp the name on their back, and then we do the staff drive and we do
Yep.
For a mini fridge or cooler or something.
Oh.
Small.
Yeah. So I really like what you just said. So PBIS is like, it turns out it's for all humans, right? This idea we work on the 4-to-1 ratio versus non-contingent attention. So I'm actually doing, I'm getting my EAP right now. My dissertation or project is on wellness, right, and resiliency of educators. And one of the biggest things is connection, right? Like, you are more resilient if you feel connected to the people that you. The more we give attention to people, contingent, non-contingent, right? Then the more connected they feel, which actually decreases a lot of our behavior by just making adults feel welcome in the school building, right? Like, so I like that idea of how do we plan for this at a grand level? Like, are we frustrated with faculties talking together about their weekend? Like, or are we grateful that they're doing that because that's building connectedness, right? Do we allow time for like share outs, or for like, hey, like, tell me something like you that doesn't have to do with school. Those are those connected pieces to ignore when we get deep into the work. When we're starting to struggle, we start to that burnout. We're with our blinders on and with our head down and we work. And so I like that idea of how do we reinforce, first of all, like contingent reinforcement. Yeah, thanks so much for following. I noticed that, right? I noticed that you actually put a lot of work into PBIS, and I appreciate it. Here's a mini we want to find. I feel like on the 7th, I need to bring a mini fridge and we'll do a ticket drawing. Don't you think? Yeah. It'll probably be pink, but it's so t-shirt, so everything's fine. We're good. Okay. So the next thing that we're going to do, and I'm going to give you time to plan. When kids are building skills or adults are building skills, skill building is not naturally reinforcing. Okay. So this idea of, I want you to learn a new Canvas system. Teachers are like, that's amazing. I love not knowing what I'm doing for a long time before I know what I'm doing. Like, I think I'll, sign right up for that. Okay. So building skills is actually really uncomfortable and naturally adversive. Okay. So that is when we actually want to shape behavior and start adding in external reinforcement to build the hook to want to build that skill. Once we have this skill, it becomes naturally reinforcing because we like to do things we're good at, right? So we do things like some people are good at riding a bike, and so they're excited to ride their bike. I am not good at riding a bike, and so if you say that, I will probably cry. Okay, so we have to be thinking through when we're shaping behavior and building skill, we have to add in external reinforcement until the kid or the adult has the skill. Okay, once they have the skill, then we can say, yeah, that will be naturally reinforced. Kids that have a long history of failure and failure of building skill, they're going to be particularly sensitive to being asked to do something they don't know how to do. Okay? So we have kind of three different kinds of like positive attention or contingent attention we can give to kids and adults actually. So the first is acknowledgement. So acknowledgement we should give really freely. It's a noticing of, and I even start the sentence with "I notice that," because I naturally want to give it be really reinforcing, but it becomes fake, right? Like when it's too much. So this is called narrating the positive or noticing of. I noticed that you came in. I noticed you got your materials. I noticed that your eyes are on me. That's acknowledgement. So it's pretty neutral, but it's still giving more attention to the behavior we want than the behavior we don't want. So that narrating the positive is actually really important to keep our 4-to-1 ratio where we want it to live. Okay? Those are for behaviors that kids already have the skill. They don't need extra reinforcement to build the skill. The next is reinforcement. So this is actually reinforcing. So it's that external reinforcement that's used when kids are trying to build a skill. So this is when we say, thanks so much for completing your work. That was really responsible. I really appreciate the fact that blank, right? Okay, so that's that verbal tagging of behavior, adding of a affection or emotion into that, okay? Verbal reinforcement. And then the last is that tangible reinforcement. And this is, we need to be somewhat discerning with this, which tangible reinforcement is actual, that visual or tangible representation of the fact that there was a noticing of, okay? Now, the same behavior in my class, so a kid coming in and get started on their work, one kid, that might be a skill they have, and I'm going to notice it. Say, I noticed you got started on your work, okay? Next kid, we're in kind of the fluency building stage. I might be in verbal reinforcement with that kid. Hey, I really noticed that you came in and did your work. I appreciate that. Thanks so much. Okay, that's verbal reinforcement versus tangible reinforcement. Kid that's never done it. Today they did it. You better believe I'm going to be like, oh, here's the Bobcat buck or whatever. I appreciate you coming in, getting started. That's a big deal. And I'm going to add a lot of reinforcement. So same behavior, but each kid's on a different kind of continuum with that based on their own skill set. Okay? So you're just thinking about ways we can give attention to things that acknowledges kind of the where we're at on a skill set. Okay? So new teachers, I coach a bunch of new teachers right now. And when sometimes we celebrate, sometimes we're in that, man, I brought you a candy bar because I noticed in your last lesson you had lots of opportunities to respond. That's a huge deal. Thank you. I would never do that with a seasoned teacher, right? Like we're working on other things. But that new teacher, that's a hard skill to build. Opportunities to respond.
You can
It's
still
hard
bring
to
me that
get.
candy bar.
I'll still bring it. I still have the mini fridge. It turns out I have some stuff. Okay. So thinking about how we're using these is really important. Okay. And while it's not necessarily part of the PBIS framework, it is part of behavioristic thinking and being careful about how we're using these to shape behavior. If every kid's being reinforced for everything, so let's say I'm using tangible reinforcement for every skill, this is where we start getting kids going, what are you going to give me? What are you going to give me if I do that? Okay, that's when that happens, is when we've given that level of reinforcement for skills they already have. Okay, and so and that's okay. We just recorrect and go, oh, I must have made a mistake. Here's the thing: you have that skill. We're going to do that in my class. And when you go above and beyond, that's when you're going to get that ticket for that. Okay, so that's a clue. The other thing is we want to make sure we have high rates of readily available reinforcement in any of these three areas in our classroom, because when we need to run a tier 2 or tier 3 plan, which will include extra reinforcement, it always does. If you have other kids going, that's not fair that so-and-so gets that, that's an indication that the reinforcement's not high enough in our class in general. If everyone has what they need, they're much mad that someone else is getting something different. Okay. So this is why it's so important to make sure these kind of ratios, these understandings are in place, so that we can kind of pre-correct for some of those things we know might go wrong. Last thing, and then I'm going to let you plan. So there are 3 different kinds of skill deficits. So this again goes to that kind of SEL piece, skill building piece. Kids have kinds of deficits, adults also. So the first skill deficit that we have is acquisition. So that means we've never acquired this skill. Okay. So I told this story on Tuesday, so if you're an admin, I apologize. But I am learning last year, no, still this year. Last year I was learning how to golf. I have a cute 60. He's rarely see him. Because he's that age, so he's with his friends all the time. He's also with his dad some of the time. So I noticed he was golfing a lot, so I decided to learn how to golf so that I could spend time with him, right? If you have a teenager and they golf, it's the best time ever because you're stuck in this golf cart with them. Like, they can't avoid you, right? Which is great. So I went to go to some golf lessons, and at the beginning of the position, I've never learned that skill. I'm sure as heck I've never done it correctly, right? So I'm in this golf lesson, and the instructor's like, Aspen, show me how you hold a golf club. Just take a couple swings. And then he records it, and I'm like, oh, this is like the worst thing ever. Talk about not naturally reinforcing, right? Oh, you want to record me doing something I don't know how to do? Fantastic. But thank you. So I'm in acquisition, and he's being so patient and giving me the feedback, reinforcement, right? Because it's not naturally reinforcing to not know what you're doing. So we go, oh, no, it's okay. Here's how you hold the club. Show me what that looks like. So that teaching, right? Tell, model, practice. Okay, so he's doing that. And then he's reinforcing it like crazy. Yep, so that's perfect. I noticed this time you did that. That's great. Yeah. So that's acquisition. Then I kept going better, and we move into this fluency stage, which means I've learned the skill. I want to do it. I don't want to look like not well. That's my best word. I swear a lot, so when I don't swear and I'm training, so do it, but I'm still awkward. So I am still fluency in golf. I'm still awkward. And like I still have to stand up there and think, okay, how am I holding it? Is my arm straight? Is that where are my feet? Like, it takes me a long time to golf because I'm still in fluency. During fluency, we pre-correct. So my instructor now, because I do know how to do it, but he's reminding me. Remember how you hold the club. Okay, where are your hands? Check your hands. Okay, where should your feet be? Remember, this is a driver. Where are you standing, right? So he's pre-correcting. Now he's acknowledging, I noticed that, okay? He's prompting, oh, make sure you do blank, reinforcing, and then reteaching if I do it wrong, okay? So he's not going, dang it, Aspen, we quit, you're done, go sit in the cart, right? There's no punishment. It's just reteaching when I'm not doing it well, okay? So that's fluency. Kids have fluency deficits most of the time. So it takes about 9 months to build a new skill, which is a full school year. So if you're teaching kids new skills, they're going to live in fluency for a long time, okay? So don't be frustrated when they keep reverting back to what they once did because it takes a long time to build that skill. The last deficit is performance. So performance means they know how to do it, but they're not sufficiently motivated. So a performance deficit for golf would be, I now know how to golf, but I'm way more reinforced by sitting in the cart and handing out drinks, okay? That would be performance deficit. I can, but I'm saying shady, there's drinks available, and I don't have to go to the course, okay? So that's a performance deficit. We still want to. They've done it before. They can do it. They're in 8th grade. They should know how to do this. We assume it's a performance deficit. Sometimes it is. They can't do versus won't do. But most of the time, the kid's in a fluency deficit. If we punish when a kid actually doesn't have a skill, that damages a relationship pretty heavily. So if we're like, I have a 2nd grader, she is an amazing teacher, and she's kind of a perfectionistic little child, my 2nd grader. she this year didn't understand how to hand in her homework assignment and then got punished. I mean, not severely, but just like she didn't get to go to the party or something because of the homework assignment, and she was devastated. That was she didn't know how to do it. It was a skill deficit, not a performance, or it was an acquisition deficit, not a performance deficit. So we really want to make sure kids know the expectation, have been taught the expectation, have had an opportunity to practice it before we ever punish, okay, in this place. But you're thinking about how are we building this skill with our reinforcement. Acquisition takes a lot of that verbal reinforcement because it's awkward and not comfortable. Fluency takes a lot of verbal reinforcement and acknowledgement, and performance takes acknowledgement, okay? So you're going to now plan. You're going to think, does our reinforcement system, is it tangible? Can any adult reinforce any kid at any time? Do they have their own reinforcement system in their classroom? Do we have places for contingent and non-contingent attention? Do we understand how reinforcement is actually used to shape behavior rather than just the thing we're doing so that we can tell our principal we did? Okay. I'm going to give you 11 minutes to talk through those and make plans. So you're going back to your planning documents for what you want to do. You're talking about what training you might need to have for teachers, etc. 11 minutes, go. Make sure you're putting some action down. So think of what your conversation, what action your conversation leading to. We have about 1 minute left. 1 minute left. Okay, I'm gonna call you back in 5. Conversation ending in 4. Ready to move on in 3, 2, and I appreciate it. It's going to get harder and harder to stop. So I want to be clear. This is like deep work conversation, right? And it provokes a lot of thought. So I'm going to try and minimize my talk time, but I call you back and give you more information and then give you more talk time. Okay? So reinforcement action. Oh, there's the timer. So thank you, timekeeper. Reinforcement action could be we need to revamp our reinforcement system. We need to retrain teachers on our reinforcement system. We need to check and see if actually it does reinforce our kids. Do they care about it? That we need to have a way to track who's giving reinforcement. We have a system, but we don't know who's using it. So that's another thing. So those are all actions that could come out of that. Okay. We could their teachers on what type of reinforcement they're using in their classroom. We can create a system for non-contingent reinforcement. what are our non-contingent reinforcement expectations? That would be a form, okay? So that's all reinforcement. I will say, here's the thing, when we get to the school planning document, you might not have, if you're brand new, you might not have a reinforcement system until like November, okay? So this isn't, sometimes schools are like, we gotta have all 4 pillars in place by September. That's cool. That will lead to overwhelm of implementation and you'll burn yourselves out really fast, okay? Yes, it would be nice to have it be perfect and ready to go. That is not really sustainable or systematic, and your teachers likely won't be bought in to just being told a lot of things day one, okay? So slow and steady, build sustainability along the way, and it keeps us from taking shortcuts to where people are using these as checklists of things. So, principal told me I had to do it, so I was on my filter and I gave up 10 tickets, okay? So that is not what you want PBIS to look like. Next. Our next piece is corrective consequences, okay? So corrective consequences can look like reminders, reteaching. Those are your first kind of levels of corrective consequences. But a corrective consequence or punishment should decrease the likelihood that behavior occurs again. Okay, that's how you know reinforcement means it increases the likelihood. Punishment decreases the likelihood that behavior. It's different for every kid. It's different for every adult, right? Like, again, to my son and daughter, going to the mailbox and chatting with a neighbor will increase the likelihood my son gets the mail again. Okay, going to the mailbox and chatting with a neighbor will decrease the likelihood my daughter gets the mail again. One's reinforcing, one's punishing, right? So introvert, extrovert, that's how it works, right? So paying attention to what actually works in that is important. So out of school suspension used to be used as a punishment, still is to some extent, but out of school suspension was meant to be a punishment, meaning that kid went home and then came back, they were behind in work, their parents were frustrated with them, it decreased the likelihood that would happen again. That's not what we're seeing now, right? Out-of-school suspension actually might increase the likelihood, and sometimes they don't come back, right? Like we send them home, and we're like you could have come back 3 days ago. They're like, yeah, we know. Thank you. Like this. Yeah. So now I'm not saying out-of-school suspension is always a bad thing. Sometimes the school needs time to plan. Meaning, we have this extreme behavior. We need a different setting for this kid to come back into where we decrease the likelihood by increasing support. And it turns out we don't have support readily available, right? So this might be a planning. So we can talk about that. But you want to think through, do our consequences actually do what they're supposed to do? Okay. So it is the severe or the consistency of a consequence, not the severity that changes behavior. So the fact that we're willing to and able to follow through with what we said the consequence is will. So lots of times we put these severe consequences both for reinforcement and punishment in place. Like we're gonna get Friday if you do that, and then Friday rolls around, we're behind, and we're like, so that's not gonna happen. So that's a severe consequence on that reinforcement side, right? Or sometimes when I'm frustrated with my kids, my punishment becomes really severe, right? Like you're grounded for 10 years, your cell phone or your car anymore, and all your clothes are now in a trash bag, right? So I can't actually follow through. And so it doesn't, then they're like, yeah, okay, thanks for nagging me, and I'm just gonna keep on with my life because I don't trust that you're gonna follow the consequence because you can't be consistent with it. Okay? So we want to choose consequences that are very small, but we're going to be consistent with it. That's going to shape behavior. That's what helps kids be able to trust that we're serious about both ends of that. Okay. So the other thing is we want really clearly defined both as a school and in our classroom defined consequence continuums or reductive consequence continuums, because what happens when we get frustrated or tired and our amygdala starts firing, we tend to go severe because we're feeling severe, right? Like kids triggered us, we're frustrated, we're tired. This is the 10th time they've done that, and that's when I literally am telling my 17-year-old, that's fine. You don't have any clothes on. Go to school naked, right? Because that's why I keep bringing it up. That has been a thing. Okay. So we want to have these predefined, pre-written, pre-taught, so that when it's time to use them, we have some fluency around it. Okay? If we don't have that and we're trying to come up with it in the moment, that is prime time for a power struggle, prime time for teachers making poor decisions around that. And so we want these to be pre-thought out, pre-written, pre-taught to kids, okay? That's the other thing. All consequences should be taught to kids when they're calm, okay? Whether that's tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. We say, if we have a day that we struggle in the classroom, here's what might happen. Let's talk about when you get a letter home. How do you act when you get the letter? Excellent. Is it the end of the world? No. Are you gonna get, so we pre-teach that when they're calm, okay? So that there's some fluency around it when it's escalated or actually happening. Okay, so you want to think through that. So, and then we want to think through, so do we have defined behaviors and actions? Do we have an office referral process? And that's not just put it in an ed handbook and send the kid to the office. Office referral process is how, when it goes into, when do you put it in an ed handbook? Do I come get the kid or do you send them down? Do you call the office when you put it in an ed handbook? When they go to the office, what should we expect as far as follow-up from the office? Is the kid going to make it back into the classroom? When they come back, what do you expect me to do? What are you going to do? Right? So that's an office referral process. Okay? That needs to be predictable. It's the number one complaint I get from teachers with office referrals is I don't actually know how to do it and I don't know what happened after, and then the kid just showed back up in my classroom. Okay? So we want to make sure that's a predictable space. And then, do we have accurate data collection? Okay, so those are some things to think about with consequences. You can see in the TFI, it outlines what we're supposed to have in that. I will say your district's working through kind of a code of conduct with clear behavior definitions and actions. So it's kind of like we're working towards this, but we're still going to be working, right? So it's a continual process. This is, I made this last night. I am not technologically savvy, so you're welcome, but I feel like it's pretty decent. So here's the behavior connection. So state reporting procedures they need, okay? So the state requires people to send in certain behavior data so that we can track different types of equity, different types of like gaps that we might have, okay? And then we have a district behavior policy. So every district, according to board rule, should have a behavior policy. Outlines behavior, outlines actually PBIS, outlines those things. So in the behavior policy, you guys have one. It's online, okay? And it outlines what behaviors are, what actions are. That is up for it. It's a continual process of being better, right? From your behavior policy, ideally, the behaviors that are outlined in there and actions are what's in Ed Handbook. So there's consistency between those things. So Ed Handbook should have behaviors that are parallel or that match what's in your policy. Then from Ed Handbook, in Ed Handbook, we have office managed behaviors. So what is eligible for office referral and what are classroom managed behaviors, okay? So that's ideally how everything kind of fits together in this system. We're still working towards that. Okay, your admins put a lot of work into that on Tuesday, okay, but it's not kind of an overnight thing. This is what your data looks like as a district right now. So these are office referrals. You can't see it, but if you have the slides pulled up, it's slide 32. It just goes through in Ed Handbook the month and how many office referrals we have, okay? Then it goes through minor incidents, again, the month. October was not a fun month, okay, in this district, nor September, actually. Also, that's a good indication. But we probably did some good training on Ed Handbook, and we were, like, putting things in. Those minor referrals were awesome, right? Okay? And then we're like, actually, we didn't get, like, reinforced or whatever, and so it's falling a bit. What we have, these are the categories. So Tier 1 PBIS, your Tier 1 PBIS team should be using Ed Handbook data to make decisions around school-wide behavior. What needs to be taught, what areas of our school need to have better structure around. This tells you what was put in Ed Handbook, other 2,000 other incidents out of, I think, the 5,000 total office referrals. Other is not a useful category, okay? So that's a deficit, right? So that's what we're working towards, is better categories where it's clearer, because I can't problem solve around other. Like, oh, okay, great. Like any other behavior, we're gonna decrease. Okay, so referrals. Then we had disruption, also kind of a crappy word, meaning anything counts under disruption. That's not very clear, hard to problem solve. Almost anything. Okay, our minor referrals, we had disruption is the highest, 2,000 disruptions, and then others. So again, not really useful data yet, okay? And that's a yet because it's identified and it's going to be kind of fixed. But you can see our minor to office referral ratio, we had about 4,000 office referrals, I believe, and about 5,000 minor. That's not what we want that to look like. We have significantly more minors in there, right? And hopefully less office. I'm always hesitant to say less office because if it's an office referral, put it in as an office referral. I don't want you avoiding putting it in. Okay, but we want more minors because that allows for us to understand when behavior is starting, right, rather than an escalation. Kind of the rule of thumb for putting an other into or not another, a minor into Ed Handbook. If you don't know behavior, put others. That's the rule. Okay, so no, but the minor is when I have to issue a classroom-based consequence. So if I had to talk with the kid in the hall, if I had to move their seat, if I had to call their parents, okay, that's a minor incident. Okay, so anytime there's a consequence that's beyond reteaching, that's a minor incident. Okay, quickly put it in. You don't have to put a ridiculous amount of detail, but the data is important. Also, if you're a teacher right now, teachers are like, I don't like it, especially in elementary or even in secondary. I don't like it. I can't see all the behavior incidents my kid has or the kid has. You can see that in Panorama. So if you have access to Panorama, look at that kid. It shows every behavior incident. So you can see all the things. Okay. Okay. So also our actions. We have a lot of other actions too under our minors. Okay. What I'm going to give you a second to think about really fast. As school admin, I want you to share your Ed Handbook data with, so kind of dive into that. How many majors did we have? How many minors? What areas did they happen in? How many students had them? Okay. Who put them in? Okay. Go ahead and turn and talk for about 6 minutes. Yeah. We need to show this data to our faculty. It's almost break time in 4. Ready to one. Thanks for any conversation. I need it. Oh, wait. Okay. So, I just did a really poor class. I think this happens. So you're seeing this in teacher classrooms or your juniors. They call attention. They go, "Can someone come back?" Come back. Okay. Do that. Doesn't actually work. And they're like, "Great. You didn't know that's awesome." Okay. So I did know this. Yeah. So it is break time. See you back at 1:20 when we come back. We're going to finish with consequences, and then we're really going to get into scope and sequence planning and real planning until the end. Okay. So 1:20. I'll see you in about 7 minutes. make a difference in kids' lives, okay? And that can work really well for us, meaning like it's a good intent. It can also exhaust. We'll do it at all costs, like the cost of our own lives. So we have to be really careful with how we can maintain the balance, okay? But this is something that as I kind of started being in classrooms more, teaching teachers more, working with districts more, I think I was noticing that I was naming a lot, but not able to necessarily articulate well for people. I like your pen assortment. Pretty impressive. You've got like a pen rainbow. Okay. So there are kind of 3 different ways we deal with behavior in our classroom or in our school. So the top are punishing. So ignoring and punishing. Sometimes when a teacher feels overwhelmed with the student, we ignore it. In fact, as a behavior specialist, that's what every teacher had been told. Just ignore it. Don't give attention to it. Just ignore it. Turns out that doesn't actually work that well, right? For a kid to be able to learn a skill and engage, ignoring the behavior most of the time is in the right hand. Okay. Punishing is kind of how I was raised. That's how the school system was built. I was raised with like an authoritative dad, and so punishing worked really well as long as he was present, right? So if my dad were home, we all did what we were supposed to, right? Rooms were clean, shoes were put away, we were respectful, etc. When my dad wasn't home, things fell apart a bit, right? Because that's what punishing, in order for punishing to work, the threat of punishment needs to be present. Does that make sense? Okay? Because we're doing behavior out of that incentive to not be punished. Okay? I'm not saying it doesn't work or it doesn't have a place. It absolutely does. Same with ignoring. Okay? All of these have a place. Ignoring and punishing are tricky though, because we use them a lot because it's low short-term effort. I was in a classroom the other day. Kid was in the back of the classroom in the calm corner for like 3 hours. This is not what calm corner for, okay? But the teacher was like, actually, I just don't know what to do with him. He's not bugging my class. We're just gonna leave him, okay? And no judgment on the teacher, okay? That is we need to build a skill around that before I can just like say, oh, you need to do better as a teacher. I don't know what that feels like or looks like, so we're gonna practice, right? But it's low short-term effort. It's low short-term effort to send a kid to the office. Those are easy, accessible things. And really when our amygdala is firing, that's what we go to, are those 2 pieces, fight or flight, right? Okay. But they have high long-term effort, which means the behavior doesn't change if we're ignoring it. It's just going to continue or increase actually, okay? Or if we need to be present to punish, we always have to be there for the behavior to occur the way we want it to. Okay, so it has high long-term effort and low long-term impact, meaning that the minute you're not there or they get a different teacher, things like that, we're still in the same boat we always were. Okay. The next is accommodating. This is where we live in education a lot. Okay, so accommodating is the idea of I have 2 students. What's your name? Leo. Perfect. Maida? Okay, Maida. We do not roll R's well, but that's a beautiful name. Okay, so I've got 2 students here that are struggling in my class to not talk. Okay, they're talking, they're bugging each other, they're disrupting my class the whole time. Okay, and so as a teacher, what's the first thing I'm going to do? Separate them. Okay, so I'm going to separate them. But what happens when Leo sits next to someone else? He starts talking to someone else, right? Okay, so separating may work for a bit, especially if I put them on their island, right? Sometimes in elementary classrooms we have Antarctica or whatever, and there's an island, right? That they sit in, okay? Shoot it right next to me, so I know that they learn better if they're right here. So I might do this, right? Okay, those are accommodations. They don't build skill, but they may stop or decrease the behavior. Accommodation continues to be met. So as long as they're on the island, they may not talk. As long as they're close to me, they may stay engaged. Okay, those are accommodations. We know we're accommodating when from one year to the next, 2nd grade teacher's telling 3rd grade teacher, oh hey, you have Leo next year. Let me tell you about Leo. He needs to sit next to me. He for sure cannot sit next to, anyone within 5 feet. His mom requires an email every day, so make sure you send that. And okay, so that is accommodation, okay? Or sometimes I even did this at a tier 2 kind of chat level or student success team in a secondary. Oh, well, what's happening in math that's not happening in the other classes? And we asked every other teacher to accommodate that student based on what was happening in the one class, okay? Accommodation is actually very appropriate, not long term, okay? Accommodation is meant to have a gap in behavior so we can build skill, okay? That is what accommodation is meant for. If we continue to accommodate, it has medium long-term effort, meaning we have to keep accommodating, okay, for it to work. And it has low long-term impact, which means as soon as I now move Leo next to someone, guess what he's going to do? Talk. As soon as he's not next to me, guess what he's going to do? Sleep, okay? No, Leo, I'm sorry. Yeah. But we can't continue to accommodate forever because that wears our teachers out. That's burnout, right? Plus it doesn't build skill set. So right now, data in America shows that I can fairly reasonably predict kids that are going to have behavior problems in 5th grade, in 11th grade, when they're in kindergarten, okay? That is not a good disruption of trajectory for our students, meaning that if they struggle, they're always going to struggle. We don't want that to happen. We want to disrupt that trajectory by changing behavior. Changing behavior fits into the skill building piece. So skill building takes high short-term effort. So really building a skill with a student, being on top of it, having an intervention, reinforcing, correcting, giving instruction, that is a lot of work, okay? So it takes high short-term effort, but it takes low long-term effort, meaning that once they have the skill, they'll use it, right? Because remember, once we have a skill, if we're good at something, it's naturally reinforcing. We're going to use that skill, okay? And it has high long-term impact, which means that if I learn that skill in 1st grade, guess what I'm likely going to be able to do in 2nd grade? That same skill. Okay, so my 2nd grade teacher then gets the luxury of building other skills with me rather than the same deficit that I've had year over year over year. Okay, so all of these are appropriate, every single one of them. So let's say that I did have to move Leo. I accommodated because he would not stop talking. So I did move him. When I move him, I'm going to now take the opportunity when he's not talking on his island to build a skill. Okay, Leo, just a little bit. Because I want for you to be able to sit, be part of the community, do these things. Here's what's happening. People are talking to you, and I know it's really hard to not talk, right? I'm going to do social skill lessons around regulation of when people are bothering you and your teacher's talking. You're going to practice, practice, practice. I'm going to put Leo next to someone for a little bit. I'm going to reinforce like crazy, right? When he's not talking, then I'm going to move him away, give him a break for a little bit. Then I'm going to move him back, and I'm going to keep building that skill to where Leo has a sense of regulation when he's sitting next to other kids, okay? It's a ridiculous amount of work. We cannot build skill with every kid, like at a time, right? We cannot build every skill that every kid needs, but we can name. This kid right now, I don't quite know what I'm doing with, so I'm maybe going to ignore some behavior for a little bit. Okay? Maybe they have Legos in their desk, and I don't know what to do yet, so the Legos are going to stay until I have a skill set. This kid I'm accommodating for a bit when we're getting a plan in, and this kid, this is a skill that we're building. It's okay to live in any one of these as long as you name that you're living in it. If you think you're skill building, but you're really accommodating, you're going to exhaust yourself, okay? Because you're going to get frustrated that nothing is changing, okay? So, or if you expect to be able to ignore a kid and the behavior is going to get better, you're going to be really frustrated, okay? So this is, again, not so much part of your Tier 1 PBIS framework, but it's good behavior, classroom, student management, keeps teachers well. So I'm going to give you just about 2 minutes to turn and talk, and then we're going to move on to planning. But I wanted you to see that because I think it makes a difference in our schools. Turn and talk. Go. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and move on. I'm gonna ask for your attention in 5. Quickly finish up your conversations in 4. Ready? 3, 2, and 1. Okay. So both the reinforcement and correction, those are things you might want to take note of just as an educator. Okay. Also might be part of your training for PBIS. So PBIS isn't just a checklist of, do we have these things, but do we understand these things? Do we know what they actually lead to? That's what that is. Okay. We're going to move into planning now. So we've had a lot of information. We've kind of started thinking about what we do have, what we don't have, what needs to be shifted. Okay. You have access to this. This is a goal template. So we know if we do not set a goal around what we're doing, the likelihood of it happening is pretty low. Okay. So this is a template for, I've got 2 different goals on here. One is year 1 PBIS. The other is year 2. This is for pillars 1, 2, and 3. Okay, the other one's for pillar 4, which is consequences. Focus area, so you can see this is positive behavior systems, pillars 1, 2, and 3. Strand target, okay. So this actually comes as an example from Ogden School District, which they have strands in their strategic plan. Okay, or no, I'm sorry, this is Wayne County School District. They have strands in their strategic plan. So you can see that they're getting the tier 1 and tier 2 sections of the TFI by 10% annually. That's where the TFI leading indicator comes in play. Sometimes we should have criteria for implementation, meaning if you don't have this in place, sure don't choose this goal, okay? So there's no criteria, you can choose this goal, okay? Justification. So this would be maybe why the school would say this is an important goal. The school has identified tier 1 positive behavior systems as a targeted level for school progression. This indicates that the school is in need of a systematic roles and expectations that are understood by all. These will be stated, taught, and reinforced. This should help mitigate internalizing and externalizing behaviors. Predictable schools have better SEL and academic outcomes. So that's kind of the justification for why PBIS is good for that school. I've told you that 15 times, meaning you have to know why this is good for you, okay? This is their goal, so their 90-day plan is the school will score 70% on the tier 1 portion of the tiered fidelity inventory by the end of this school year, okay? You can choose your own goal. This is just an example. Measurement tools, so the leading indicators are the tiered fidelity inventory. The lagging indicators are the outcomes or reinforcement data school walkthrough tool. You'll notice they didn't put a decrease on Ed Handbook or behavior referrals. That's intentional. We really shouldn't ever have a decrease on behavior referrals as one of our targets. I want accurate behavior referrals. So when we put decrease, people do what? Yeah, that's an easy data point to me. Like, oh, great, fantastic. Stop putting them in. Okay, which then leaves us with no data. Okay. Down here. So this is here because it might help you with scope and sequence. These are the action steps for Tier 1 PBIS Pillars 1, 2, and 3. We're going to complete the TFI 2 times annually in September and April. How will we know we did it? The TFI is completed. Complete the walkthrough tool, same time. That's part of the TFI, by the way. If you're like, okay, why is she talking about two separate things? That's in the TFI, the walkthrough tool. Create a Tier 1 PBIS team. That's going to happen in August. We'll know because we have our team charter. We have that today. Okay. Create roles and procedures for the team. Again, team charter. Hold monthly meetings. That's going to happen monthly. We will have evidence on a calendar and we'll have evidence of completed agendas. Okay. Hold a 2 to 3 hour faculty professional learning on Tier 1 PBIS in August. Okay. PL agenda, that's my evidence that happens. We're going to communally establish 3 to 5 school rules that meet criteria. That'll happen in September. So this is a school that was brand new. They hadn't started it. And they're like, we're not just going to give our teacher rules. Our teachers are going to choose the rules. We're going to work as a faculty. Okay? PBIS handbook. So we'll create a handbook. Your school admins have a school-wide behavior plan. That's where that would live. Create a location matrix for our rules. Okay, so you can see this goes through everything we've kind of talked about, but it spells it out as far as by the end of the year, we should be really solid on that TFI if we do these things as they fall. Notice they didn't say all of these are not August. Like we don't have everything done in August. We have a lot of time and luxury throughout the school year to do these things. The second goal on here is year 2, pillar 4. You may be here, and that's absolutely appropriate. The implementation criteria is your school must have established PBIS team, school rules, reinforcement systems that are shown to be used with fidelity by the school walkthrough tool. So that's how you would know if this is a good goal focus for you. There's, again, another justification. This goal will focus on the systematization of school-wide consequence system to help with the stress reduction, productive support, and consequences and equity. Okay, what happens when we don't have clear behavior descriptions and consequence continuum hierarchies for reductive consequences is there becomes inequity. So we can have one fight on Tuesday, kids get suspended for 4 days, another fight on Wednesday, and you know, they got told to not do it again. No judgment on whoever's doing that. That's a breakdown in a system, meaning that unless we have it written clear what we're doing, it's easy to make different decisions at different times. And so that's why the system's so important. Okay. So give yourself, if that's happened to you, lots of grace, right? My son, so again, extrovert, kind, cute, doesn't clean his room kind of kid. He went to the elementary school that I taught at for a long time. So he was there, and you guys, I would find him in the office almost every day. He was in Spanish immersion half the day. He didn't like the second half of the day because it was Spanish immersion. So he'd go down and hang out with the ladies in the office. Like, in essence, he'd slough school, right? And they were like, no, it's great. We love having him. I'm like, yeah, so Spanish. Like, you can't, like, just let him hang out down here. But he was likable, so there was no consequence. Does that make sense? Whereas if he was not likable, it would have felt very different. And that's where this helps with kind of that equity lens, okay? 90-day measurable goal. So this would just be measuring, we go from 70 to 90 on the TFI, okay? And notice how it's not just measuring pillar 4, it's still measuring all 4 pillars on that because we don't want to let go of the progress we've already made, okay? So that's sustainability. And then you have action steps. So these are kind of your action steps there. So the school will have an estimated code of conduct, or established, not estimated. We estimate that we're going to have one. Okay. Established code of conduct. We have a behavior tracking system. We have really clearly established classroom managed versus office managed behaviors. We have definitions of consequences and calibrate what these might look like. Calibrate meaning, again, that equity piece on one teacher sending a kid to the office because they talked out, and another's like letting kids throw desks in their classroom before they send them, you know. So we don't want that happening. School established time in conversation. So this is part of that restorative practices kind of piece. So if a kid is removed from their community, they need to be restored back to their community. That's that time in kind of conversation repair situation. We have faculty professional learning on consequences, professional learning on restorative consequences. We have data collection, fidelity checks, etc. This does not have to be your goal. These are both examples, but lots of times schools go, I don't know how to lay this all out, right? This is it laid out for you, okay? If that's what you choose. So that's a tool you. The other tool you have, I don't know, again, if you have 90-day plan templates or school plan templates, fantastic. If you don't, this is one for you to establish your goals. So you have like your plan summary page. So this says you might have plan target 1 is PBIS. Why do we need, what's our gaps? So this would be, we don't have a reinforcement system, or our rules aren't consistently used, or we don't have any minor referrals entered, okay? Those are our determined needs. And then down here you have your goals that you can set across the tabs. You are welcome to make a copy and use that if you like. So this goes through again, goals. What's our, who's the person? What time frame are we doing that in? What money do we need for it? What resources, human need resources? And then this is where schools actually measure level of completion. Did we do that action step? Yes or no? We've not started it. We're beginning it. We're partially complete. Okay, I'm not going to go over that a ton because I'm sure you kind of have your own, but if you don't, I'm happy to come to your table and talk about this. And then the last document that I want you to be thinking about right now is your scope and sequence. So this again goes into, based on all the action you set of gaps you've noticed, maybe your plan, your goal you've set, what needs to happen in the summer before August, what needs to happen in August, and you just start feeling that in, okay? What are teachers' role in that? So we want to say teachers have to attend NPL. They're going to have to create their own consequence continuums. They're going to have to create their own posters, okay? What are the students? So what do we need to talk to the students about? So in September, students are going to have to learn common rules in common areas, okay? That the team will probably have to do, okay? So the team will do it, the students will participate. Again, that'll happen in December. In August, we'll take the TFI maybe. In December or January, we'll take the TFI. In May, we're going to take the TFI. Maybe every month we have one faculty meeting that we show Ed Handbook data and our reinforcement data. We're going to put that in, okay? So you're going to start thinking through what are all the things that fit for each stakeholder, okay? So that was a lot of information. It is 1:44, okay? We're going to go until 2:20 with no interruption from me. That said, if you need help, guidance, you're not clear, you're going to raise your hand and I will come to you, okay? You should be looking at the school plan like sample goal, or the scope and sequence. If you're not writing things in those, you're probably not making progress. So start writing things in there, even if it's not the most accurate yet, okay? Any questions before we start? Okay, I'll see you. Yeah.
Okay, so start, okay.
And then in August. So we're gonna go ahead and pause. We're gonna take a break for a second. So I know it's frustrating to be in the middle of planning and then be asked to take a break and then come back and plan. It's purposeful. So we get into kind of overload, get up, move your body, don't stay sitting. So I mean you can do whatever you want, you're an adult. But I recommend getting up, moving. It helps our kind of reprogram, rethink, be ready. We'll be back at 2:30. Okay, so you have about 10 minutes to take a walk around the building. Be back at 2:30.
Okay, that looks right.
Go ahead and start finding your way back. Thanks for getting up and moving. We're gonna go ahead and get started again. And so, thank you. Perfect. There's the law. Okay. So our target was to end at 3. That's the plan. I'd like to end at 2:50. That's my plan. So here's what this is going to be. For 10 minutes, I want you to finish up your plans. Does that mean you're finished? No, it means that you're at a good stopping point. So you're going to go through and say, all these things that are in my head are written down somewhere. So maybe they don't fit on any of those 10 bullets, and you have a running record somewhere. But you want to get, like, you don't want to not make what's in your head concrete right now. So however you need to do that for the next 10 minutes, do that. Okay, we'll go 10 minutes. Then I'll call you back. I'm going to show you panoramic car seats. Hence the video earlier, right? Car seat. For 6 minutes, that's the plan. Then I'm going to have you take a survey for 4, and then you're going to finish on like whatever your best next steps are, and then we'll be gone. Okay, so 10, 6, 4, gone. Well, steps gone. Okay, yep. Go 10 minutes starting now. So we're gonna go ahead and come back in 5. Conversation setting in 4. Ready to move on in 3, 2, and 1. So I'm going to quickly show you some things in Panorama. Focus, which is going to be tricky. So whatever's going to be distracting, make sure it's not distracting. Because I want to show you, and this will be very quick. So this is like a 1% of what you want to know in here regarding tier 2, but I wanted you to make use of a form. So I had a question earlier saying, what are our decision rules for a tier 2 team for student for intervention? Best decision rule I can recommend is sorting data in Panorama. Who's in red and yellow for behavior? Maybe. Now it's gonna, nope, not green, sorry. Thank you for I like when technology people are here. The lights go down, our sound is perfect. So I quickly sort yellow and red for behavior. I had 20 kids. Guess what kids might need intervention? Those 20, okay? Then I look down here and I say, out of those 20 kids, which kids already have intervention? This kid. I don't know that that's an intervention so much, so verbalize your thought process. I don't love that as an intervention. I like it as a hope, okay? But these flags indicate we already noticed those kids. This kid, Cassie Colston, has not been identified. Cassie's struggling with SEL. Cassie's behavior. Cassie's struggling with grades. She's a great student for a tier 2 intervention, okay? It's that easy, that quick to sort data to choose a student for intervention. If sometimes you maybe sorted this, we did this earlier with one school and there were over 100 kids for behavior. If there's over 100 kids, those are not the kids, you're not going to intervene with every 100 of those kids. So you might want to add SEL. Okay, so we're now going to sort by SEL as well. Who else was red for SEL? That's one student. This student for sure needs intervention. Okay, lots of behavior, lots of SEL issues. Okay, those are your decision rules around intervention. Okay, let's say that I did decide Jean needs intervention, so I go into Jean, and this is where that form I shared with you, I believe, this one. Okay, so this attendance panorama intervention tracking guide. This is the car seats. Okay, so remember from our video, the car seats, we had a booster seat, forward facing, backwards facing seat. We want predetermined intervention, pre-taught, predetermined, ready to go. They need to be in the car, ready for a kid to use them, because we can predict they need them. We can predict kids need attendance intervention. This is your guide to entering the intervention into Panorama. So attendance, tier 2, family engagement. This is the strategy. We're running Check and Connect. That's one of the only research-based interventions for attendance. Unfortunately, it's a long one. It's a year to 2 of intervention. So maybe not the most accessible, but if you have Check and Connect mentors at your school, or you're interested in Check and Connect mentors, let me know. That's something I can help you with. This is how you're going to enter that into Panorama. If you don't have Check and Connect, but you have a kid that's struggling with tardiness, then we're going to say this is an attendance intervention with the focus of tardiness. The name of the intervention is Morning Check-In. Morning Check-In runs for 4 weeks. This is how we'll monitor the data, and this is how often. Let me show you how that translates to Panorama. So you go into Jean, that's what we're going to say. And I want to create a new plan. Jean has attendance interventions or attendance issues. So we're going to go, what type of intervention are we running? Attendance. Guess what the guide tells you? Exactly what to put there, okay? Do you have to use my guide? No. Should you create a guide? Yes, because then that allows for you to say which interventions did we pre-choose? Are we all putting them in the same so that when you go back and say your intervention's working, you have accurate data, not messy data, okay? It's a tier 2. Remember, we said we're running we want to focus on tardiness, right? That's what we're hoping to affect. This says you can choose up to 3. I do not recommend choosing up to 3. You should not have 3 focus areas, and that makes your data very messy, okay? I would choose 1 then if I were you, okay? Down here, what is the goal? So we're gonna write in, we'd like for, this is almost like a sped clap-up, okay? On your, here, I gave you an example of what to put there. So if you wanna take that template and put, and that's what everyone puts in with the student data, great. If you wanna make your own, great. But you want that to be meaningful. So that is not meaningful, by the way, but that's what we would do. Then it says, select strategy from the library. Again, I do not recommend that. Yes.
The template is helpful because Panorama sometimes refreshes in the middle of your typing and you have to start over. So use the template.
That's always good.
We love Panorama. Use the template.
Not my favorite. I do not suggest select strategy from library. That's again where it gets messy. Someone's like, great, I'm gonna run this intervention with no training, no fidelity, no data collection, or maybe it's not even an intervention. I do not suggest that. You can if you want, but it's very hard to run interventions with fidelity. So if you're just choosing a random intervention, it's not likely going to be ran well, okay? That is what exhausts our teachers, or interventions that are kind of ran, okay? So then you're gonna add custom strategy here. Do you remember it was called morning check-in, right? I'm gonna type that exactly as my school told me to. I'm not, but you would, okay? You're gonna press add. Then here, when are we starting? I don't care when you start, okay? Duration, remember it was 4 weeks. It tells you right on that template, okay? Add to schedule. You can add that. I don't use that, but again, if you find that useful, do it. It's useful for social skills sometimes. Then any references, this becomes more handy when you have like check in, check out or something and you have to link a document. That's where you link those documents. Keep in mind, every teacher that has this kid can see this information. So you don't want to put like a home visit in which there was trauma or something on there. Does that make sense? This is like anything you don't want everyone seeing, don't put in here. But a form you want everyone seeing, link it in here because everyone has access. Okay? Then you're going to go to continue. Who's in charge of it? So Anthony is going to be in charge of it. Okay? Monitoring method. On that thing, it says, what is our monitoring method? I'm going to say custom method, and for morning check-ins, I can't remember what I had. It says it right here. Monitoring method, morning check-in, number of tardies. Okay, so that's what I'm checking. That's how I'm going to collect my data. So I'm going back to here. Number of tardies. Not that. Okay. Right now, she has 5 per week. She's tardy every single day. I want her to be down to 1, let's say, okay? Any reflection? How are they doing in this area? So we notice that she comes late because she, gets distracted on the way to school. I don't know, okay? So we type something in here, create intervention. It's been created. So it says. Okay? Now we see here she has an attendance intervention, and I'm going to report progress on a weekly basis on number of tardies. It's going to create a name line for me. I can put notes in, etc. When I go back as a school, now I can go in and say how many, it's the sandbox, so it's not going to show me. Over here, you have number of interventions. You can go in, how many attendance interventions do we have? Are they working? How many plans have been updated? So that was like the quickest version ever. But I want you to know, how do we sort kids easily? Don't kill yourselves in your tier 2 teams trying to go through a billion things of data. Sort it in 10 seconds, choose kids, okay? When you enter a plan, choose 3 to 5 interventions in tier 2 that you're using always. You can have a couple attendance ones, a couple behavior ones, a couple social emotional ones, but have pre-planned, pre-trained interventions that everyone puts in the same so you can check and see if they're useful, okay? I'm sorry that was so fast. I'm happy to answer questions about it. Not right now, but whenever, email me. Okay, last thing. I want you to go in and fill out a survey for me. So at the end of the slide deck, if you have access to the slide deck, the survey is linked at the bottom. If you don't, ask your admin to share the slide deck with you, and please fill out this survey here, okay? Once the survey is filled out, unless Megan or Mary, is there anything that you need to announce? Okay, once you filled out the survey, have a great weekend, okay? See you later.